They enlisted John Willsteed, a decision that was, I think everybody, including Willsteed, now sees as a mistake.
His musicality provided a whole new fabulous layer to the group. His keyboard parts, his guitar, truly were great. My experience probably was greatly diminished by it because I had no support from him at all.
There was, of course, it was tempered by the fact that I had never really had a lot of time for the band. I'd never really listened to a whole album of theirs.
He was absolutely impossible to deal with. He was incredibly difficult, disruptive, always drunk.
It was the very opposite of a Go-Betweens fan. I used to bag them a fair bit, I'm sure, you know. That wasn't my shtick at all, that sort of music. Mm.
At times, Mark Wallace and John Willsteed were going, "But she can't play, but she can't play," and demanding that I do kind of funk beats.
We played together for years. I never liked her drumming. It's true, I shouldn't laugh about that. That would be a demoralising attitude to have from your bass player, you know, the other half of your rhythm section, to be aware of this constant, you know, I don't know, disapproval or you know, this kind of critical thing all the time.
One real image I have is John Willsteed walking into the studio one day. He said to Grant, "Oh, what have you been doing, Grant?" Grant goes, "I put down a whole bunch of guitar tracks, John." And John goes, "Oh, right, OK, I'll have to listen to those." It was that sort of tension going on quite a bit between the guitarists.
Grant and Lindy apparently never did get on. They probably had brief moments of camaraderie, but I think on the whole that was the fly in the ointment for the band in a way. But they made that work as well. It was very canny. I don't know how they made it work, but they did. And, you know, Grant, as Amanda Brown has said, he really is a gentleman, and he was at many times very complimentary, particularly about Lindy's abilities as a musician.
When there's chemistry, and I think what you saw with the Go-Betweens and sort of the recognition of that, I mean, it's like, obviously the dynamics relied heavily on the creative tension, if you want to call it tension.
The Streets of Your Town was a real surprise because we'd kind of nearly finished the album. I remember Grant coming in one day and going, "Oh, I've got this little song I wrote last night," and he sat down and played it. I just went, "Crikey, we got to record that. That's got to get on the album." And it really was at the 11th hour. It was quite funny.
But the rain is on its way. Watch the butcher shine his knife.
And like, this was a song that he never played to me, but Mark Wallace knew about. And, you know, it was a bone of contention. You know, like, I was disappointed that he didn't... That was the only time it ever happened. Really weird.
It wasn't hidden from anybody. It was just the fact that it was written so quickly.
The two of them in their Bondi Junction pad come up with this fabulous tune.
And don't the sun look good today?
And I just started singing along and thought of those vocal, you know, call and response melodies really quickly. The whole thing just came together.
And this town is full of battered wives.
Like, we were just stunned, you know, because it just said single. Neon, single, single, single. And, you know, Robert's going, "Oh, you know, well, we've already decided on the 5 songs." And I'm going, "Oh, we've already decided on the 5 songs," you know, like everybody taking their factional position.
And I ride your river under the bridge. And I take your boat out to the reef. but I still don't know what I'm here for.
I'm not playing bass on it, I'm playing guitar through an octave pedal, and so it has a guitar line and a bass line which are following one another, and the bass is quite low because it's sort of fake, you know, in a way. I think it's a mix of two different octaves, and so it has this nice low bass line, but it sounds a bit like a keyboard line or something because it's played on a guitar rather than on a bass, so it doesn't have the same feel.
Every day I make my way through the streets of your town.
I could play the guitar solo from Streets of Your Town, but I won't. It's a ukulele, for God's sake. I can play that. But you'll never be able to cut it in because it's in a different key. Cheap nylon string guitar solo. It's like a Chicago song, you know? Everybody, Michael Bolton, you know, everybody does nylon string guitar solos in the middle of pop songs. But anyway, it's a lovely guitar solo. I felt like there was lots of room for me, which was surprising, you know. I played bass, but then there was just room to do, you want to play guitar, go play guitar. So I played lots of guitars on it, and very much enjoyed myself doing it.
I think John Wilsteed's musicality on that record is terrific. All those guitar lines are just brilliant, you know, just beautiful flourishes that he plays. And I think in a way that they wrote cracking songs, and I've heard the demos for that record, and they're very good, but Wilsteed was the secret weapon on that record.
I personally think, listening back to the record now, that Mark Wallace did a great job. He made us all do things, I think, that were a little bit out of our comfort zone or that we hadn't done before. For example, the backing vocals on Streets of Your Town, he got me to layer up lots of tracks, but there are a few takes that were just whispered. And I was initially really against this idea because, you know, I didn't want to sound like some kind of wussy Serge Gainsbourg ingenue. And, you know, in my mind, that song, because of the way it was conceived, was almost like a duet, and that the vocal parts were very even and should be quite present and strident. But in the end, the way Mark mixed that vocal, I mean, you can't really tell that there's a whispered track of vocals and just a straight sung track. But together it does have a lovely kind of soft, summery quality that really suits the song. We were all interested in film and literature. We go on tour and everybody would be reading a novel on the bus. There'd be like, there was no porn or, you know, trashy magazines or, you know, even tabloid newspapers. It was highbrow all the way.
I was reading people like a poet called Anne Sexton, very compact, punchy, shorter lines, and getting to the heart of things again. So I learned from her. Clowns is like that. But still, you know, like, it can be deceptive. You take a song like Love Is a Sign, you know. I'm 10 feet underwater standing in a sunken canoe. That's a fairly flamboyant line, you know. That's a fairly... so I'm still doing that. You know, like, there were still lines like that, and Die For Your Memory, a lot of it's like that too. But the melodies are a bit different, and it just had a... We got a little bit more into the acoustic guitar around this time too, so that led it as well.
I'm 10 feet underwater, standing in a sunken canoe, looking up at the water lilies They're green and violet blue.
It's all about the water lilies and the looking up, and I don't know, it's another song about how he hopes to fall in love, or he hopes to have this person. You know, we were well and truly over as lovers by that stage. He was with other people, and he was a serious lover. He was not a playboy. Despite the fact that in some songs he called himself a playboy, he was never a playboy. He was a very serious chap, and particularly where it came to love.
The letters that we're writing, baby, they just break our heart. And when we're back together again, there's just no time to start. No time
Get back together again, there's no time to start. I think that was probably, and this is just my interpretation, but perhaps Robert's first song about moving on from the Lindy relationship. It was about finding someone new, and it had elements of the long-distance relationship.
I want to be the one and love aside. I'm not a playboy or a poet.
Love is a Sign is a song which I think has some really nice, I don't know, they sound like mandolin things that I must have been playing really high up on an acoustic guitar, which I really love the sound of now when I hear them. You know, they're very, they're like little washes. A lot of it is about texture. It might just be a little phrase here, or it might be, you know, a doubled sort of rhythm acoustic guitar part or something.
Green and violet blue, no matter what you say, no matter what you do, I want to be the one. Love is a sign.
Melodically and musically, it's very intricate. I was trying lots of different ideas with my violin, where I'd take a simple melody and invert the melody, so just play it backwards, play it up the octave. So it was never repeated the same twice. And those violin lines kind of interweave with, you know, beautiful, intricate guitar work.
You down by the river, and London no longer exists. This is what I found. No matter what you say, no matter what you do, I want to be.
There was never much ambiguity about Grant's lyrics, and that's one of the beauties of them, that he said exactly what he felt, and Robert created characters in his songs, and you had to work out what part of it was him and what part of it was the character.
Yeah, Robert has a trick in his songwriting that a lot of people don't know about, and that is, and it's in You Can't Say No Forever. He uses that trick where he turns the genders about. It's a great trick. So the he is the she and the she is the he.
You can't say no forever.
The most unusual track on the record, actually. It was a borderline selection to go on the record, and now I'm very glad that it did. A song that we could never play live. That's all I can say about it. I like it. It's the one track when I was listening to the record today that still intrigues me.
They were men who were prepared to admit that they didn't know, and didn't know how to behave, didn't know how to be whatever it was that other people were expecting them to be. But they're also prepared to say, I'm okay with that. If I'm hurt, I'll express it.
And sometimes we don't come through, sometimes we just get by. But I know with you I've never seen the devil's eye. to write a
In
message.
person, Grant was the most amiable, gregarious, likeable person. Everybody loved him.
Sometimes
But no one is like that all the time, and you know, I think that the melancholic, retrospective side of his nature came out through his art and his lyric writing.
He lost his father when he was very young, and I think that's a good starting point for a lot of what he was, you know, and what he wrote about. I think the melancholy is right at the heart of him.
And sometimes we don't come through, sometimes we just get by. But I know with you I've never seen the devil's eye.